The internet has a lot of fan theories about every single show in existence. Most of them are downright insane. Some of them are interesting. Some of my favourites of the fan theories are in shows like Ed and Eddie, that all of the kids are dead and are trapped on the cul-de-sac, and that's why all the kids are so different from one another, because they're from different eras in time, which would make sense that all these kids that live in such close proximity are so different from one another. There's conspiracy theories that happen to some of the older shows that were released decades ago, before the internet, like the Flintstones, one where the Flintstone is set in the future and they live in the aftermath of a nuke going off, and the TV show The Jetsons live above them, and that's why the Flintstones have dinosaurs and stone tech to mimic 20th century things, because they are further ahead of time. Whether or not you and I believe these theories are unimportant. At the end of the day, some of them are fun to listen to, some of them have more weight to them, and some are just ridiculous. And since this video is going to be on the topic of Pokemon, I might as well mention the Ash Ketchum's conspiracy theory, where people believe that he's actually in a coma after getting injured in the first episode, and all his journeys after are just a dream, which would explain how he has met so many legendary Pokemon that people think are myths, and most people don't even meet one legendary Pokemon, and he has met them all. But Ash's possible delusions is not the topic of today's video. We are talking about well-loved characters of Pokemon that have been around for almost 30 years. Today we're talking about Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny. Nurse Joy is a nurse at the Pokemon Center that helps take care of injured Pokemon. She first appeared in the episode Pokemon Emergency, where Pikachu gets injured the episode before, so Pikachu and Ash head to the Pokemon Center and she tells Ash off for getting Pikachu so injured.
You don't let your Pokemon battle till it's in this condition. But you don't know what happened! What's past is past.
We also see another Nurse Joy for the first time in this episode as they talk to one another to confirm the Pokemon that were transferred to the other Pokemon Center arrive safe. There is a Nurse Joy in every city that gets visited in the anime, and all of them look alike with the same hairstyle and outfit. The only thing that shows that they are different is the colour of the crosses on their head. The first time we meet Officer Jenny is also in the episode Pokemon Emergency. We see her announcing to the residents of the city that there are Pokemon poachers. Then Ash runs into her with an injured Pikachu and she gives them a ride to the Pokemon Center. Officer Jenny also all look the same but can be identified by the symbols on their heads. Fun fact about this episode, this is also the episode Team Rocket gets introduced. The Team Rocket we see the most in the show is comprised of Jessie, James and Meowth. Their performance review must be awful each year. All of their evil schemes failed. They got pretty close in Unova taking over but still failed. They spend a majority of the time chasing this 10-year-old boy and his special Pikachu but get their butts handed to them region after region. When they finally are not beefing with a preteen, they are trying to steal random Pokemons and they still fail. How much money do they burn through on all the machines that get destroyed almost immediately after they build them? And the hot air balloon, the custom made hot air balloon that gets popped every time they use it, must cost a fortune. Okay, I'm done talking about Team Rocket and their poor use of money. As I mentioned before, there is a Nurse Joy in every city and Officer Jenny in most. They teach us by having their entire family across the police force and the Pokemon centers. Every single center has a Nurse Joy from the Joy family. Some of them have first names, most of them do not, but they are always ready to help. Similar story with Officer Jenny. The Jenny family love being in law enforcement. Some people have commented over the years that it's odd that all these cousins and sisters look exactly the same within their region, and almost all of them are the same age, but most people do not think too hard about that. Then there's people like me who think a lot about that and how weird it is. Some on the internet have concluded the only possible way all these women can look the same is that they are Pokemon. Since humans do not co-create copies of themselves, even if they look like their parents, there are still clear differences, but the only one able to tell the difference between the Nurse Joys and the Officer Jennys is Brock. Brock, who wanted to become a Pokemon breeder and a doctor. It would make sense that the guy studying Pokemon could tell the difference between this Pokemon woman. Now I'm going to talk about all the evidence that Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny are Pokemon. The first rebuttal to the theories that they are Pokemon is that they look like humans, but Pokemon can look like anything. For example, Pikachu, the most well-known Pokemon there is described as a mouse Pokemon, meaning it is similar to an animal that already exists. So why would it be weird that there's a Pokemon that looks like a human? Because humans are just different types of animal. Humans are animals. Also, Pokemon don't just look like animals. There's Klefki, which looks like a set of keys, Trubbish that looks like rubbish bags, Hone Edge that looks like a sword, Cofagrigus that looks like a sarcophagus. There's Litwick, Palossand, Voltorb, Pineco, all Pokemon that look like other objects. Pokemon can look like so many things, both animal and object, so looking like a human is not an insane idea. There's Mr. Mime, who's already halfway there. Plus, we already know Pokemon can talk, like Meowth. He never stopped running his mouth. So a talking Pokemon capable of looking like a human could hold a job down. Speaking of jobs, if Nurse Joy or Officer Jenny were Pokemon, they would not be the only Pokemon with jobs. If we're talking about the original series, then in the construction field, there are usually fighting type Pokemon carrying around heavy objects like Machamp and Machop. In addition, there's also Drillbra and Excadrill that help with excavating. There's There's a Squirtle Squad that became firefighters early on in the series. Also, Meowth works for Team Rocket. He is part of the crew. He's not one of their Pokemon. In the Pokemon Horizon series, there's the Alcremie that helps with baking. If we talk about the Detective Pikachu movies, there's a Machop guiding traffic and an Octillery working at a food stall. In the game Sword and Shield, there was a function called Pokejob where you could send off your Pokemon to work at jobs. They had a coffee shop called Yoshida's Coffee that required water types since they know the best type of water. They had a monorail called Wyndon's Monorail that required electric Pokemon to inspect the monorail. There was a bookstore called Bookmark. Psychotypes would help find books. The list of jobs worked by Pokemon is long. Even Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny work with Pokemon like Chansey, Ordino, Arcanine, and so many others. Officer Jenny and Nurse Joy working as Pokemon is not a far-fetched idea. Maybe the first Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny were human, then something happened to them, which made them Pokemon, because humans turning into Pokemon canonically happens. Gengar was once a human that now killed to try and become a human again. There's Kadabra that was once a little boy that woke up as a Pokemon. In the Pokemon Yellow, Ninetale is said to be 9 noble saints that were reincarnated as a Pokemon. In Fire and Red, Hitmonchan is said to be the spirit of a pro boxer. Frostlass is a woman who died in the snowy mountains. Frillish are the people of an ancient city that got sunk. Phantom are kids that got lost in the woods and died. I'm listing all these people that became Pokemon, and it's really depressing. Jeez. Another rebuttal to this theory would be, if they are all Pokemon, how can they be the same gender? But there are Pokemon species that only have one gender, like Voltbee and Illumis, which are counterparts to each other. There are both male and female Combee, but only the female ones are capable of evolving. There are also genderless Pokemon like the Unknown, Ditto. Most legendary and mythical Pokemon do not have gender, other than Latios and Latios, who are each other's counterpart, as well as Cresselia, which is female, but most of them don't have gender. Also, there are Nurse Joys with children. We see in the episode Drifloon on the Wind, when we meet the Nurse Joy's children, that they look exactly like her. And when you breed Pokemon together, the Pokemon always come out of the egg as the same species as the mother. That's why most starter Pokemon are male, so that you cannot have a whole team of Charizards unless you happen to get a female Charizard, which only has 12% chance of happening. So the Nurse Joys can be one gender and can procreate, which explains why there's so many of them. If the Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny theory is correct, it would mean that a man married a Pokemon. But according to the original Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, in ancient times, Pokemon and humans were close, to say the least. I'm happy we did not see that in Pokemon Legends Arceus, because that would have been disturbing. In more recent years, and by recent years I mean compared to the ancient times of Pokemon, the episode I'm going to talk about came out decades ago, but in more recent times, Meowth has been shown to have crushes on humans. In the episode The Problem with Paris, where this woman called Cassandra saves him and he falls in love. The humans and Pokemon having romantic feelings for one another has not been eradicated. I'm moving on from this topic because yes, it does add weight and backing to this theory that I'm talking about, but it is making me uncomfortable. In more recent years of Pokemon, the concept of regional type has started to come up. Regional variants of Pokemon are different forms of the same Pokemon that have adapted to the region they live in, usually resulting in these Pokemon being different type or even having a new evolution than we are used to seeing, such as Sandshrew, which is originally a ground type Pokemon but is an ice and steel type in Alola. There's also Meowth, a well-known character that is a normal type. When born in Alola, they become a dark type, or even more unique, if they are in the Galar region, they get a regional evolution called Berserker. There's Vulpix, Diglett, Growlithe, Mr. Mime, and so many more that have regional types. You might be wondering why I'm mentioning this. It is to further support that these women are Pokemon. The Nurse Joys and Officer Jennies have regional types too. There's the originals that exist in regions like the Kanto region. Then there's Black and White Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny who exist in Unova. There's a new type in Kalos, Alola, and Galar. They have more in common with Pokemon than people at this point. My favourite for the Nurse Joy's regional types is the original or the new Pokemon Horizon one. Alola Nurse Joy should be burnt. This scared me. For the Officer Jennies, my favourite is the one from Kalos, and the least favourite is the Unova one. They tried to be different and it did not work. When you refer to shinies in Pokemon, it usually refers to a certain Pokemon that looks different than most of their species. I'm going to use this term to refer to Officer Jennies and Nurse Joys that stand out from the rest, usually due to their career choices. Spectre Nurse Joy, who is a part of the Pokemon Inspectors, who are a group around the world that investigate and prevent crimes. She first appeared in Praline Blues, where she was investigating if different Pokemon gyms were safe, and if not, they were shut down. Another appearance of an Inspector Nurse Joy is in a Pokemon special that came out during the Diamond and Pearl series. She turns up at Pewter City Gym and challenges Brock's younger brother, Forrest, who has taken over the gym for him, to see if he's worthy of being the gym leader. There's also an archaeologist Nurse Joy that appears in the episode Shell Shock.
Legend has it that the oil from Kabuto shells not only brings good health, but it can make people live forever.
This Nurse Joy is a director of excavation that is exploring an uninhabited island. It is also heavily applied in Pokemon Horizon that Molly is a Nurse Joy that ran away or has some sort of fight with her family, and she is a medic, but she refuses to enter a Pokemon Center at all. In the show, there's an elderly Nurse Joy, and Pokemon do age, like the Trico we see in Trees a Crowd. There was also an elderly Stoutland that died of old age that I totally did not cry about when watching the episode. Another argument against the theory could be that if she was a Pokemon, she would be able to use moves, and she has never done so, even when she's being attacked. Thanks to Meowth, we know there are consequences for Pokemon trying to be more human. Meowth reveals he cannot learn the move Payday because of his ability to talk does not allow it. So if Meowth lost the ability to learn that new move just from talking and standing, how much would a human-like Pokemon lose? The answer would be all of it. The theory that Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny are Pokemon has been floating around on the internet for a while. Do I honestly believe that Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny are Pokemon? No, I don't personally believe that they are Pokemon, but I do find all these coincidences interesting and fun to look into. But if I'm going to fully immerse myself in the theory, I think Nurse Joy was originally a healer in ancient times that got struck by lightning or some other natural disaster. She was killed and reborn, and she is a normal ghost type, like this regional Zora, which has the ability of illusion, so it can look like anyone. The first Nurse Joy got something similar, so she can look like the human she once was, and she keeps the behavior up of the normal Nurse Joy. And I think there's a similar story between Officer Jenny, that she was a hero of her town fighting crime and died in glorious battle and then became a Pokemon, because Pokemon of the same species often do have very similar personality types. So certain Pokemon are more proud than others are more silly, so a Pokemon looking towards helping people makes sense. This show is where the most well-known Pokemon is a mouse that can shoot lethal amounts of electricity, yet has never killed anyone. There are Pokemon that also control time, space, and reality itself. A human-looking Pokemon is not that strange. Tell me your opinions of this theory in the comments below. Tell me about any other cartoon theories that you genuinely believe, not just the boring ones. I have realised most cartoon theories are just everyone's dead, everyone's in a coma, they're all incredibly mentally ill, it's post-apocalyptic, or there was some form of mass death and they're all ghosts or something. Tell me interesting ones. I want to research some more cartoon theories that are not just and then they all died or it was all a dream. Goodbye. And I do know about the Don George family. They only exist in Unova and are not as interesting.